It is 2 o'clock. Welcome to the first meeting of 2019 and a happy new year too. Can we go on to the agenda now, please? And the first item is apologies.
Yes, Chair, we've had apologies from County Councillors Watkins, Howard and Trahan.
Declarations of interest, as and when? This meeting being called, it's a special meeting to do with timings of council meetings. And as you know, at the last meeting, we asked John to send out a survey to members and to see what responses we got back. And if I hand you over to John now, if you can tell us how many, John, out of 43 members replied.
Yeah, there was 17 overall. Some didn't answer all the questions. Some answered the ones they want to. I had a couple by email as well. It's not bad. It's a response to the survey, really. We've captured all the answers that have come in, and we've attached that to the agenda. So you've got a detailed breakdown of all the responses that have come in. Just to summarise the responses, really, the majority of members preferred the current arrangements of morning and afternoon meetings to evenings. It was noted that many outside bodies have arranged their meetings in evenings so that it doesn't clash with county council business. So it's going to upset the balance between those who are on outside bodies, town council meetings, etc. The majority of members think that meeting time should be fixed rather than varied, because obviously we've spoken about alternating 2, 10, 4 or 5 or whatever. Majority felt it should be fixed rather than alternated. And the majority also felt it should be up to each committee to consider its own start times and let them agree it themselves. We ask questions around different start times. Would it be better to start at sort of 9 rather than 10, 3 or 4 rather than 2 o'clock? The earlier meetings, it was noted that that could impact on pre-meetings. So you could end up with starting at 8:30 or 8 o'clock rather than actual meeting at 9 o'clock, and how that might impact earlier on in the day. But again, the general consensus was sticking to 10 and 2. Some members thought it would be useful to trial some different times for selects committees, but having another trial wasn't the preferred option for most members. And ultimately, on the point of the meeting, really, the majority of members didn't think that the committee should make a recommendation back to council to consider the timing of meetings again. That's what we're here for. That's what we're here to talk about. The answers are there. So I just open the debate up and let people ask questions.
Yes, Martin.
Thank you, Chair. John, thanks ever so much for organising that. And I think the answers are not crystal clear, but I think you've pulled the strands out there. And when you actually look at the majorities altogether, I think it's for the status quo. And so I think, the nature of democratic organisations are that we should accept that. However, I would make the point that, in a sense, this came about because it was part of a wider discussion and conversation about whether more people would be more likely to stand to become councillors if it was at a different time. What we've concluded is that things are fine for the people that are here now. What we haven't found out is that very important thing: how do we widen it out? And while, yes, I think we're bound to say, my own view is we're bound to accept the findings, I still think we shouldn't let go the fact that we are much of a muchness as a group of people. And that to get people of different ethnicities and genders and ages would make it a far more representative council in the future. But despite your best endeavours, I don't think we've succeeded in getting an answer on that one.
I think it's difficult. because if we change times to try and encourage diversity, it will impact on the attendance of the members who are serving now. The requirement for us as a council under the measure is that once during every term of the council we have to consider the timings of meetings. We've done that previously, and this is the second time we're coming back around to it. What the answer is, I don't know. I think at the minute, from what I could draw from the responses that come back in, is the timings of the meetings as it stands at the minute will serve the purpose of the council for the term. But maybe there's something we need to put on as a plan further down the line towards the end of the term, as reviewing it again as to what times would suit candidates who are going to stand for election next time, possibly. And start that 12 months prior to the next set of elections, so we've got plenty of time to consider it and look at the appropriate option, or at least make candidates who are going to stand aware that the timings of meetings aren't fixed. I think that's probably part of their illusion, is that the council sets the timings of meetings and nothing can be done about it. Well, no, you can do something about it, so let's make them aware that if they got elected, they have the power to hold meetings when they want to.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I totally agree with that, because what went through my mind is, as Councillor Grocott clearly spelled out, this shows there's no appetite for change for the way things are at the moment. However, it does show that the council is listening and is not set times that things can be changed if obviously people's circumstances warrant it. We've got 26 members who haven't replied. So are we saying they must be fairly content, or they would have replied and seized, or should have seized, the opportunity to put their viewpoint forward? So the main thing is, we're always open, the council's always open to listening to what people, you know, whether this changes next year, if somebody came back with it next year and said, well, we're not happy with things, can we look again? There's always the opportunity there to examine these timings, and you're quite right, people who are standing for council, if they know that from the outset, it could make a difference. The other thing is, I note the fact, are there any common denominators? One of the question 8, you know, between those who don't attend. I mean, that's something that could perhaps be looked at. If you know, if people want to flag that up themselves and say, I can't come for whatever reason, and if that turns out to be a recurring theme for a particular meeting, you know, or a particular councillor, that's something that perhaps could be looked at in future when we're taking into consideration the timing of these meetings. But there's definitely, from this, no appetite to change anything at the moment. And in particular, evening meetings do not seem to be very, very popular at all from the answers we've received.
Just, sorry, Chair. Just following on from the point on the common denominators, the Chair and I have had a discussion just before Christmas around seeing if there's anything we can do around recording better apologies, reasons for apologies, not just people putting their hand up and saying why. So we'll look to see if there's something we can do around that, and maybe we can glean more information and evidence from that for when we come to review it towards the end of the term, as why people can't attend meetings and things like that. But that'll be coming to the committee soon, and then we can have a debate about recording apologies and reasons for apologies then.
Judah?
Thanks. I don't in any way disagree with what Martin or Sheila have sort of expressed today. I think we've got to go with what is there. In terms of you saying, you know, why people are not here, I'm on a governing body. I know Martin is, and other people. But if I don't attend a governing body, I have to send apologies, and I have to give a reason, and they decide whether they accept it or not, whether it's a valid reason to say, well, you know, I'm ill, or, you know, my wife is very ill, or what, you know, whatever. And I think perhaps we should have some sort of, not screening, but some data then to see, well, why people can't come. And I think that, you know, that would be useful. 2 other things. One, I am disappointed with the relatively poor response. You know, I'd hope there'd be sort of, you know, 20s, 30s respond. I know it's a busy time for people, Christmas, etc. So that we could actually gauge it. And the fact that some of the members who really wanted to push on this issue for, you know, for work or having care of young children, they're not here today to sort of, say, all the members here today are retired, and obviously it isn't quite the same. We've got a council now. If you look at particularly at some of the parties, obviously you've got a large number of younger people and people with young children and responsibilities in that way with school or childcare, etc. And deep down, my feeling is I want to involve a broad brush or spectrum of people to represent views. I'm retired, I've got grown-up children. It's a distant past now when they were young and school, etc. Whereas if I was of an age that we had I had school-age children, then it would slant my view. And I'm a bit disappointed that there isn't a sort of more of a clear steer from this to say, well, let's have meetings at 4 o'clock or, or whatever. And personally, I would go with the flow, in that way. I've got the flexibility to do that. But different people have got different responsibilities. Personally, I wouldn't particularly want to start a meeting at, say, 6 o'clock here on a winter's night, for all sorts of reasons, really, and I'm sure most people wouldn't. So I'd agree with Martin and Sheila. I think we've got to go with what is there. It's a democratic process. We have asked members, and as Martin said, well, if you felt strongly about it, you would respond, wouldn't you? Because you'd say, well, I wanted at whatever time. But I think long term, if we want to encourage diversity, and particularly across the age range, across the male, female, etc., and responsibilities, I think we've got to change a bit, to be honest, because otherwise it's going to stay, and I can't see going before, starting at 9, I think is too early. It's in the job that I did in Cardiff, where we had a lot of external meetings with teachers and whatever. Realistically, you couldn't start before 10, to allow people to travel. And out here, most people don't live in this locality, do they? So, I say I am disappointed that there wasn't a better response and a bit of a steer then, and we could have actually done something about it.
I think what I've taken from it is the current situation suits. I think suits the term of the council at the minute. What we can do more of is examining the reasons for apologies, promoting more remote attendance, particularly amongst the sit-in members now, and have that become the norm by the next term, so people can see that they don't have to attend meetings. I think this could have been used for that purpose for some of those people, the councillors who couldn't attend today. Perhaps they should have been able to remote in or thought about remoting into the meeting. We've got the facility there, and we need to be using it a bit more, I think. And that'll back up whatever time we hold meetings. If they can still get into the meeting somehow, the timing of the meeting becomes less important. You mentioned 4 o'clock. Some of the responses in there say that's too close to school pickup. It's just not an ideal time to start a meeting for everybody. But let's open up as many ways possible and understand everybody's reasons why they can't make it, and try and find ways to get them in. And remote, I think, is one of the things we've got to try and push a bit more, I think.
Anybody else want to come in? No. Going back on what was said earlier about opening up the meeting times, and when the new councillors come on for this term, right, I don't think enough time was spent with them before the election to say this is what you have to expect. And I don't think it was fair on them new councillors that got elected on, because some of them didn't know what they was coming into. And I think it's not down to the officers. This is down to us as members. When the new council is due up in 2 years, is it 2 years' time? That we need to be sitting down with any new person that puts a name forward, male or female, to say, well, this is what you should be expecting. These are going to be the times of the meetings. Is it going to be okay for you to be attend these meetings at these times? And there could be some late ones, because I go back, I said to you earlier on, Tudor, go back 2 years ago, we had a meeting at 5 o'clock, either 4 or 5, and we never left here till 10 to 10 in the night. That's late. You know, it don't matter, you know, and it's not fair on the officers, because the officers are here all day. They have to be here as well to be answering questions. So they're not as fresh as we are as members coming into these meetings. So we have to look at right across the board. And I think it's a failing on us members, really, to not say to the candidates being put forward, this is what you have to expect. So, yeah.
Just on that, given the timings of when we know the candidates to the proximity of the election, it's really difficult because we're talking about 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So to try and combat that, we started briefing sessions with all the political parties, all the representatives from the parties, and opened it up to anybody who wants to come in here. I think we ran 3 sessions in the chamber and said, come and understand what the election's about and what you need to do to stand. And Francis Taylor was the chair of Democratic Services at the time, gave an overview of the role of the councillor and the commitments needed to do it, the impact she felt when she was newly elected last time. And we did handbooks 6 months in advance of the election that we could just dish out. We gave to the political parties, we put in the hubs, we put on the website and everything. Our issue is we're trying to hit people who we don't know who they are until 3 weeks before the election. To help that, every nomination paper we had in had then information about the induction program, when they were going to be, dates they were going to be, times they were going to be. So they had opportunity. If they thought, I can't do it, they can withdraw. But again, because you've got such a short window, it's trying to hit it. But if anyone can think of any other ideas, especially as newly elected ones, that we could do at that point to target people, then I'm all ears.
Judah?
Yeah, I've got to agree with John, and I'm sure Martin, you know, obviously he and I were, as it were, new boys on the block, as it were. But, you know, that induction, you know, before the election, I felt was very comprehensive. And I remember, you know, coming to the session with Francis Taylor, and she said how it had affected her. And obviously, you know, I think she's got a young child, hasn't she, and etc. But apart from that, I think it was good. But whether I missed it, but in my sort of ignorance, I assumed that council meetings were fairly fixed at sort of 10 and 2, you know, in that sense. I didn't really pick up on that. For me, it wasn't an issue, because I haven't got childcare commitments. I haven't got other work commitments, other than, as it turned out now, I'm on Abergavenny Town Council, as is Martin. And obviously we've got to go to those meetings in the night, haven't we? You know, those are scheduled normally at 7 in the evening. But I would struggle to see how much more you could do in that period. And I did come attend those induction sessions because I thought they would be useful, and to be fair, they were. It gave me a fairly good sort of flavour, you know, of what it was going to be like, because I've not been a councillor before, not been an elected member before. So it was very useful, and obviously for some people who didn't get elected, well, that's by the by, but obviously I was elected. I had some idea about, you know what's going on, but I can't see much more of what you can do. The other thing, I think, about remoting in, the job that I did, we used a lot of teleconferencing, because meetings in London, Coventry, etc., and you had people from all over the UK, and some people, like me, being probably a bit old-fashioned, I tended to attend because I felt just, you know, being there was that bit better. But they were effective meetings. I suppose it's a thing of familiarity, isn't it? Of getting into the swing of it, and the fact that it is acceptable. And if you're realistic, you don't want, as a member, you don't want the people in your ward who support you. You don't want them to think, well, oh, he or she can't be bothered to go to the meeting. They're just sitting at home having a coffee, you know, and just zoning in on the microphone. You know, there are a couple of underlying issues there as well, because, you know, electors do want to see you doing your job. And I think you've got to probably balance that.
I think on the flip side, we're talking about it from encouraging diversity and people from different backgrounds. And if we're looking at younger people, they may be more confident in the technology and happy to use it, just not know it exists for them to use if they were going to become a councillor. So it swings and roundabouts, isn't it?
Matt?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I don't envy you really grappling with this one because there's no one simple answer to it. We're dealing with 43 human beings, and we're complex creatures, and actually the very nature of having a diverse council will mean there will be a diversity of meeting times that suit people differently. And I think, as you've discussed and are exploring now, and as John has mentioned, this is a suitable time for the councils we have now. That's been borne out by the survey. It's something that can be revisited, but also, as you're now saying, the technology is there as a backup or an alternative to others. And I think over time, whereas some people in the community may perceive remote attendance now to be perhaps a negative in that you're not turning up, actually in future it might be the time when driving is seen as the unusual option, as we all think more about sort of resources and costs and CO2 emissions, that sort of Skyping in and remote attendance may be the norm. And right now, we know that it's difficult and it doesn't quite feel right to me, as it may not to some of you, in compared to a physical meeting. But as John said, there are people out there now for whom Skyping is the norm, and as technology advances in years to come, actually it may feel more inclusive. I was at the Tim Peake exhibition yesterday in Cardiff Museum. We put the virtual reality headset on, and you actually feel like you're travelling through space. And perhaps in 4 or 5 years' time, at the start of the next council, someone sat at home in their bedroom might feel an immersive part of the chamber. But for now, I think you have a situation that probably works for the members that you have. You've done what you can in terms of the amendments to the Constitution and the technology we have within our budgets. And I think as members, you've always been open-minded to consider that in future these things may change, and you're always willing to revisit these discussions.
Absolutely, yeah.
Can we have the recommendations or the findings, John, again from you, so we can deal with them one at a time, so we can take it to council?
Do we want to take it to council, Chair? I'm just thinking we are having the meeting to consider whether we want to make a recommendation to council. I think from what we've gleaned from the survey, there isn't a desire for us to change the arrangements that we've got in place right now. We've got the survey we can fall back to. If we look at putting that piece of work together around the apologies and gathering more information and data, then as we come to look at it further down the line before the end of the term of the council, then we can revisit the issue and look at it with a bit more information and see what's suitable going forward.
You all happy with that? Yeah. You all happy? So we go with the information we got, and further, like John said, further on down the line, we'll look at it again. Because the reason why John and myself was having a discussion before Christmas over apologies was it's easy for people to get up here, they realise somebody's not here, and they, apology for so-and-so, an apology for so-and-so. That's still giving the effect that they part of the meeting, or they're registered as part of the meeting, and they're not because they haven't put their apologies in. And I'm going to be honest with you, even before I come as a county councillor, when I was a town councillor, I hated it, and I brought it up many times in town council that a person should ring in or email in to say that they can come, and there should be a reason as well. You know, so you all happy then that that's what we'll do? We'll look at it further on down the line, and then we'll see where we go then, and if there's any advance on the timings then. Yes.
Thanks. I just think in terms of the apology, you know, in my naivety, when you're elected onto a council as an elected member, then it is not an invite to attend a meeting. It is a, you know, you are sort of mandated, aren't you? You know, it's not saying, would you like to come to the meeting? If you cannot attend, and obviously things crop up with, you know, with everybody, and whether it's illness or members of your family or whatever, or you're away on holiday, come what may. But I agree with you, with the chair. I think people need to ring in, phone in. It's not good enough for somebody else to say, oh yes, Councillor Thomas isn't here, apologies, because then it trivialises it. And say, I go back to the governing body issue. If you miss a governing body meeting, you have to apologise, but you have to give a reason. And it's up to them then whether they accept and say, well, no, that's not acceptable. You know, that isn't acceptable. So if it applies there, I would have thought being on the county council, it's even more so, you know, more important.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just thinking now, is this a good opportunity to email members and just remind them of the importance of giving apologies, that this matter's been discussed, the timings of meetings, and if there is an underlying reason and some sort of common problem, it would be useful and recommended that members not only send their apologies prior to the meeting, but also include a reason why they cannot attend. Maybe that could be done now. Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, I was just going to suggest that perhaps John could email the leaders of the political groups to say that as a committee we're minded to take this forward, to actually find out the reasons behind apologies and have those recorded and get the views that way. But it's really just an alternative to Sheila's suggestion. I think one way or another, people shouldn't have it foisted on them. But at the same time, I think it's something we need to look at very seriously.
I think just in terms of the conversation we've been having today and around remote attendance, whether it's worth the committee considering moving its meetings down to the conference room like we had the last meeting and trying to encourage members of our own committee to remote in, just to get some familiarity with it amongst members themselves, even if it's just remoting in from upstairs. And if you're not happy, come downstairs, but just give it a go.
Yeah.
Just a thought, Chair.
And we have to notify members when that's going to start.
We'll have a look at the room bookings, see when it's free, and fix it out for the next dates. But definitely from May onwards, definitely, and we'll see what we can fix now for the rest up to May now.
That'll be good. Do you want to add anything to that, Matt?
No, I think that's a good suggestion. It's an option that's there. We know it's not been extensively used, and perhaps demoing it and getting people to try it out might help those who are perhaps not confident about trying it out for council or another meeting. This is a relatively, sort of smaller meeting compared to council, and therefore easier to manage a trial of remote attendance.
It's a good idea.
Thank you very much, then. As I said, this meeting was only to discuss the timings of meetings, and we've gone into it, and we've touched on apologies as well. So I think it's been worthwhile. And our next meeting is a month's time, I think. Yeah. I'll go on AOB. 4th of February, the next.
Thanks, Chair. It was just, you may not have seen this yet, and it's been copied to some members of the committee, but not all. You might remember a gentleman by the name of David Farnsworth, who's attended a meeting previously. He's dropped an email to yourself, Chair, over the weekend regarding the budget engagement, and suggested it might be an area for the Democratic Services Committee to look at in terms of your interest in participative democracy. I'm very conscious that we started that work with the subgroup of the committee, and it's been sort of remiss of me that I haven't got that group together of late. It's something that needs to be done. And Chair, if you were sort of satisfied with this, perhaps a response to Mr Farnsworth could be considered by that subgroup. In the meantime, I'd pick up with Peter Davis, who's not in the office today. It was regarding the extent to which the budget consultation is effectively engagement, or are we just sort of asking people to say yes or no to a predetermined choice? So if you were supportive, I could look to arrange a meeting of that subgroup, and we could pick up a response to Mr Farnsworth at the same time. And yeah, I know that both Mr Farnsworth and another gentleman, David Hoyle, who's engaged with the committee previously, are people who I know we could also sort of draw on to share their views with that group.
Guy from Monmouth?
That's right, yes.
Yeah. Oh, it's quite a thought.
Absolutely. Well, I'll acknowledge that later today and confirm that.
Thank you very
Can I ask for something to go on the agenda for the next meeting, or maybe we could discuss it briefly now? Directories, phone directories for members. It is very, very difficult. I know it's online. I know we've had this discussion before, but twice recently I've had the need to sort of find a contact in a particular department, and I've had to ask other members. It's not easy. A typical example, somebody wanted to know about licensing and cost of bingo licenses, and I had to I searched for ages online. I couldn't find I just couldn't find anything. I find more information, to be honest, in the address book, on the email address book, than anywhere else when you don't know the person or anybody in that department. So I've asked other members and that's helped. But I still feel, even if we have to take responsibility for keeping it up to date, a directory would be helpful.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Matt, do you want to come in, Matt?
Yeah, to give a response to that, I absolutely recognise that. If you know someone's name, that online search directory is fine, but it doesn't allow you to search by department or function or keyword. It is something that's been picked up within sort of my remit. I've got customer service. We've got a piece of work looking at telephony at the moment in response to feedback. I think that people often find it hard to get hold of the right people. As part of that, one of the things we're going to do and make available to members, it won't be the big old-fashioned sort of directory of every number, but it will give us structure with a key contact number in each department, so you know what happens in each department, and you've got a contact number for that department that would always be responded to. So it won't be this month, but sort of before too long, something will come out to members with that information.
Right, that is the end of this meeting. Thank you very much, and safe travel home.